Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I get to simplify the marketing and the mindset necessary so you can grow your practice, have more income, more reach, more impact, more enjoyment in your practice. On today's episode, I'm chatting with a good friend and author, Marcus Pearce. Marcus has just written this stunning book called Your Exceptional Life. I have found myself of recent asking myself more than ever, like, what's the point? Whenever I'm on social media, watching the news, it seems like the very fabric of society has been broken down. There is an increase in judgment and hatred and a decrease in love and freedom. And at different times, these things can worry me. And at different times, I got to tell you, I've even shed a tear about where things are going. Now, in the episode today, I chat with Marcus about the importance of spirituality and purpose in helping us to navigate through some of these tricky times. Now, if the truth be known, at the moment, I actually feel more hopeful and energetic and inspired than I have in a long time. And in today's episode, I'll talk about the key distinctions that helps me feel that way. In essence, depending on where I'm focusing, the thoughts that I'm having, that's what leads up to the feeling. So I'll share that inside of that too. This book, and I talked to Marcus in it, I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of books from friends that have written it too. This is a brilliant book, and I don't say that lightly. There's so much thought and depth that has gone into it. It would be a brilliant book for you to have in your chiropractic practice. Now, whether it was patients that wanted to buy it, or this would be a beautiful gift for you to give patients. It is an adventure into the chiropractic vitalistic lifestyle. Everything inside of that matches what we talk about and we teach with our patients. So you could, one, buy a whole bunch of them and give them to your patients, or I think Marcus talks about inside this episode through here, you can have them in your practice and only kind of pay for them once you sell them. I think you can do that. But at the very least, what you should do is buy this book and read it yourself. I really think it's that good. But let's not hear me talk about it. Let's jump in and talk with Marcus. And I hope that these concepts in around purpose and spirituality, if you're having a rough time at the moment, then too, I feel you. I love you. I think you're amazing. And I hope today's episode provides some clarity and delivers a little bit of hope for you as well, because I think that's one of the things that we need at the moment. Lots of hope. All right, let's go chat with Marcus.
Welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast, where we guide natural health and wellness experts through the pitfalls of marketing. Each episode, you'll learn simple, effective, easily actionable, and heart-centered marketing strategies. And here's your host, Angus Pyke.
Marcus Pearce, welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How are you, my friend?
Angus Pyke, it is so good. I feel very privileged to be back on this podcast, but more than ever, I want to say congratulations to you on becoming a father once again. And as much as it's a digital coming together again, so good to see your smiling face.
Buddy, likewise, and thank you. I was walking little baby Sonny the other day. We would kind of get a walk together, the two of us each morning. And I hadn't computed that I'm now a father of three, although there was a significant pause, 19 years in the middle. But it's like, oh, because for so long people go, how many kids you got? I got two. And I went, oh, I've got three. And it felt so wonderful to say that. So thank you. He's now 2.5 weeks old at the time of us recording this. And
so fresh.
Yeah, it very. And starting, because really the first 2 weeks, there's been a lot of feeding and sleeping and changing nappies. But we had a moment a couple of days ago where the two of us kind of just hopped in the rocking chair and I got to just look at him with his eyes open for maybe 45 minutes. It was beautiful. So, yeah, let me start with this. Buddy, the hugest congratulations on this book. It's sometimes with nerves that I read books like this, particularly books from friends, because there's books and there's books. And it doesn't, and by that I mean, and it also doesn't matter the author. I have a little book group that I do with Tony Croak and Martin Harvey, and we read one of our books earlier on in the years was Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. We're all huge fans of Start With Why, and we all hated Leaders Eat Last because really it should have been a 20-page book. Like, in fact, the title said it all. And I'm looking through it, and sometimes it feels as though that the author is trying to justify the pages. This is a meaty book, like it's a lot of 280 odd pages through there as well. and it's bloody brilliant. Like I haven't finished all of it yet, and I've been so moved by some of what I've read so far. I want to start with this. There's a quote in there as well, which I'm going to find it as I kick off here as well. And this is preparation here that I had all of this stuff.
No,
Actually,
I love that you have read chunks of the book, because you'd be amazed. Well, probably most people would be surprised that when you often get interviewed as a new author, the interviewer often has no idea about the book. So I feel very humbled that a friend and the interviewer, who is the same person, has actually read chunks of the book. So kudos to you.
I'm loving it. So let's start with this. Out beyond the ideas of wrong doing and right doing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there, by Rumi. What does that quote mean to you? And why do you think that is perhaps, I think that is a profound, given the times that we're in at the moment there too. Tell me what that means to you and why you chose that quote.
Well, right now, Angus, I have a hidden agenda that on my social media, I want to post that same quote day after day after day after day after day and nothing else, because I feel like that quote, it's incredible that you brought that up, is if I could only put one quote in that whole book, that would be the one. Because as a journalist by old profession, I feel like we've lost all diversity in our culture and society when it comes to conversation. We have become a culture of right and wrong, and we have lost that messy middle of all of the shades of grey, or the 64 million colours, or however many there are in the world. And I feel like that Rumi quote is something that we almost need to wake up every single day, and before we start our day, almost meditate on that quote, read that quote, jog on that quote, ride a bike on that quote, rock a baby in our rocking chair on that quote, because sadly, we are as a, and it has to be a we, because we're all in this together as we're told, but we as a society are almost living our lives in the opposite manner to that quote by Rumi. So the idealist and the romantic in me is why I love that quote so much, because I have an ideal that we will all meet in this field. And that's really what I suppose the whole premise of the book is. It's quite an idealist book, but I truly believe that it's possible for every single one of us.
The practical application of that, I mean, we're recording this in those whose names shall not be said, there too, of which there's really strong opinions around all parts of it, of which we don't need to get into. But those strong opinions, it's very easy for us to get self-righteous about it. And the interesting thing is this: the listeners that are going to be listening to this tend to going to have a much more vitalistic, pro-choice sort of feel. And so sometimes we can get a little self-righteous in our pro-choice, in our vitalistic side of things, and then make the others wrong as well. What's the practical application of that quote again that I butchered a little bit, but out beyond the wrong doing and the right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. What's the practical application, and how do you put that into play for you? And how would you advise somebody to play that out in their life throughout the day as they're listening to this?
That is a fabulous question. I'm already loving this so much. So my wife, Sarah, is a chiropractor. We had a chiropractic center for 6 or 7 years. And I'm sure you can appreciate this, Angus. The practical application of that quote is dealing with your friends and family that either have no idea what chiropractic is about and they never want to, or they think they know what chiropractic is and they just think it's pathetic and terrible and quackery and pseudoscience and the rest. And so I've always thought that personal growth is not what you do in the room. Going to university is not what you learn in the classroom. It's actually what you do when you go and live in the society that has no idea about what it is that you do, or they actually don't want to know what it is that you do. There's already that judgment. And so how do we respond practically when we are already judged? And most of us then get self-righteous. When we are judged, it's almost we judge back. But I do think, there's always an option. It's judgment or curiosity. And curiosity is asking questions. Judgment is making statements. And if you read the news, you're always reading judgment, because you never read headlines that are questions. You always read headlines that are statements. Whenever you make a positive statement, it is a judgment. And that practical application of that quote is being more curious in life, asking more questions in life. And as hard as it might sound and feel, is coming with those questions to a place of non-judgment, where you actually happy for diversity. You're happy for people to be different. Everyone that listens to this or watches this that is in wellness cannot exist without the sickness industry. You know, we often get self-righteous about drugs and surgery. It's drugs and surgery that allow us to be the other side of the coin. And how grateful are we to be on the other side of the coin? But we can't have our side of the coin without the other side of the coin. And that is for me, that's the beauty of life. Like, thank you for the sickness industry that allows people to have these aha moments, these epiphanies, these come to Jesus moments of how awesome it is to be vitalistic and a lover of wellness.
Let me ramp it up a little bit in that same thought, because I'm like, look, I can buy that with regards to whether somebody likes chiropractic or not, and whether somebody believes in natural health or not in there too. If somebody cuts me off in the traffic, then maybe I might see that maybe they're having a bad day. But what if I feel at the moment like my civil liberties are being taken from me? My choice to behave in a manner of freedom that I thought I had beforehand. Something that will be a lot closer to people there too, that's a little bit more charged. How do I move beyond the right and wrong of that scenario? There's a juicy one for you.
There's an absolutely juicy one. I think we all have a acceptance and a forgiveness threshold. So I challenge people a lot on this very topic. What is forgivable? What is unforgivable? Is rape unforgivable? Is genocide unforgivable? Are the removals of your civil liberties unforgivable? And there is a lot of hate towards certain politicians in many countries of the world right now. The challenging question I ask myself and others on a regular basis is, can you still come to these people with love? I know a lot of people that would say, I wouldn't kill anyone in the world except the leader of this political party.
Yes.
I won't mention names, but there is that is, in the most brutal terms, that is a statement of hate.
Yes.
If I said to you, Alice Hertz Sommer, the oldest female survivor of the Holocaust, forgives Hitler, we're all sometimes good, sometimes bad. Pessimism, I have no room for pessimism or hate. Hate begets hate. Hate affects the hater more than the hated. If we are to hate the people that are restricting our civil liberties, and let's be very clear, those civil liberties are being restricted, what benefit to you right now is there in hating it? Because as soon as you go down that path of hate, in many ways, you shut yourself off from writing a more empowering script of your life. And that is the challenge, as brutal as it is. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I don't think anyone can sit here and go, they haven't gone to some deep, dark places over the last 18 to 24 months. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is your life is your script. Even when you feel like that script or 80% of that script is being written by a political party or a political leader, never give up the quarter of the page that actually allows you to live your life, whether it's exercising for an hour a day, whether it's calling friends and talking for no time limit, calling people and having those deep and meaningful conversations, whether it's being able to engage in your life in a way that just gives you an element of control. I'm not here to make comment on political policies because we'd be here forever. But what I am here to say is that only us have the ability to control that part of the script that is our attitude when we wake up in the morning, our attitude towards ourselves and others throughout the day, our attitude when we go to bed at night, what we put into our body, the decisions that we make, they are still our decisions. No matter how much we feel coerced into making some of those decisions. I think you and I were just talking about this off air. We are still 100% responsible for our life, no matter how difficult that can be to accept sometimes.
I've been really spending some time and checking in what I'm making things mean. So, we talk about levels of freedom and stuff that are being removed from me. And I also, I check in what do I make things mean? And then what are my beliefs in around it? And that I've realized that, and this is a conversation that chiropractors will often have with their patients, is they might say, hey, listen, when you're vomiting, is that a sick or a healthy response from the body? And we can go through a bit of a Socratic conversation with somebody where they'll come to understanding, that feels horrible, and yet it's a healthy response. Now, I'm not clever enough to know what the universe is doing, but the meaning that I'm trying to put on this at the moment, or the meaning that I'm living, is that we're in a state of vomiting at the moment. It feels very, very unpleasant. And hang in there. And when I'm one of those noisy vomiters too. I like to let rip, scream and yell. And, when my wife, Lauren, hears me vomiting and she's okay, are you okay? I'm like, baby, I'm letting it go. So that's my metaphor for what's happening at the moment. Now, given I don't know what's going to happen next hour, let alone tomorrow, let alone next year there as well. If I'm going to make up a future, you better fucking well believe it. I'm going to make up one that makes me feel better. Full stop.
Absolutely.
I can't.
And even, go on.
No. So and so that's, that's what's serving me at the moment as well. So, sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, well, I think, one of probably our great chiropractic mentors, Dr. John DeMartini, his reframe on COVID, he calls it Saint COVID. Now, how many people would go, what did you just say? What did you just say? Saint COVID? And it's just an instant, almost an instant projectile vomit.
Yes.
Of going, hold on, actually, if you can get your head around that with all of the civil liberties and all of the taking away of your ability to sleep and all the rest of it, just imagine if you could wake up each day and go, what is saintly about this time right now? It's an incredible question. And again, I'm not saying it's easy to answer, but gee whiz, it's a lot better than some of the other questions we ask ourselves.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to this beautiful book, Your Exceptional Life. In there are 8 ingredients that you talk about that make up an exceptional life. I think there's 60 odd exceptionals, which it's so funny because each time I read exceptionals, I read Expendables and I think about Sylvester Stallone.
and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, that's every time I read that, that's something about my brain that goes through there as well. Those, I want to give a brief outline of what those ingredients are. And then there's 2 in particular that I want to dive into. We've touched on one of them as well. Their life purpose, movement, social, nutrition, family, growth, wealth, and spirit. The 2 I'd want to have a bit of a chat about. We started a little bit on spirit, but I want to jump back into purpose. Purpose, particularly for us as chiropractors, it's a conversation that was introduced to me very early on. And to be honest, buddy, it was a bloody bugbear for me because I wanted to be struck down with lightning, and metaphorically, and feel the same sense of purpose that I imagined that Mother Teresa had, or Nelson Mandela. And I couldn't find what it was, and I was searching, and the search for my spirit just got me more frustrated, which meant I felt like I had less purpose. So therefore, it was interesting as well. And I love the way that you've gone through it in there as well. Tell me, why is purpose so important? And then you have I love the idea of seeds to help find it. Tell us about those.
Well, first of all, can I reminisce with you a little bit and say that when I was new to chiropractic, so I'm a journalist by profession, I married a chiropractor and fell in love with chiropractic whilst I was falling in love with my wife. You were one of the first chiropractors outside of Sarah that I met. And I just want to let you know that it was the purpose and inspiration that people like yourself and Tony Croak and Damien Christoph and Jen Keating and Wayne Todd and Angela Todd, you have always inspired me with your level of purpose. So, and I just probably want to say that for all of the chiropractors out there that feel like they haven't had their nirvana or come to Jesus, Mother Teresa moment, is just never lose sight of the fact how much you're inspiring your community, whether that's your practice members, whether that's the people that know that you're a chiropractor but are still too scared to come in, and they've got your number in their phone, but they're waiting for the day, probably when they feel like they're about to die, and only then will they come in and book in for that initial consultation. But I love that you've said, and I think you probably say what a lot of us feel, is that purpose is not this epiphany that is tingles down the spine every day when you wake up. Any of us that has done personal growth events and feel like we have to start the day every day feeling 50 out of 10, either has never had children, has never lost sleep in the middle of the night, or has never just woke up feeling a little bit more flat than another day. But I think purpose for me is something that requires a lot of introspection. It requires a lot of turning off Netflix and not even reading other people's books. It's actually It is I think I've put it in the book, the unexamined life is not worth living. It's actually the examining of life and what makes you tick and what's happened in your life, whether it's a physical crisis. So many chiropractors started their chiropractic adventure when when they were patients, clients, practice members, whatever you wish to call them, at another chiropractor. And that may have been in their younger years, teenage years, maybe even as young adults. And then they decided to go and study. So I think assessing these seeds, which again, there are many of them, whether it's you had resistance from your parents and you wanted to almost rise above that, whether you had no money growing up and you wanted to create a career that allowed you to have some financial stability because you wanted to provide for your children what you weren't provided for, whether it's that you had any form of social crisis where your community was just so severely lacking and you wanted to actually go and fill that need. There are so many seeds that we just seem to gloss over in life. And when I do this with people and I get them to join the dots of their seeds of experience, there's always one or two or three seeds that can sprout into this exceptional life purpose. But giving it the time, and I'm a big fan of 7-year cycles. I think giving it the time and giving those seeds the opportunity to sprout, and again, watering the seeds and seeing how they grow. So going to chiropractic college for 5 years and then having a couple of years as an associate, or being a mum or a dad and having a child for 7 years, then you really begin to feel like you've got your skates on and you know what you're doing. But many of us are very impatient. We're not prepared to give it that level of time. And to begin with, sadly, we're not prepared to do the work to go inside and understand what makes us tick and be okay with it being different to what my colleague does or my sister does or my dad thinks I should do or my teacher thinks I should do. Like, owning that unique life purpose it takes a lot of courage. I think it really does.
There's something that you tell a story in the book there too. There were a couple of things I think that were self-imposed hurdles that I had with getting clarity in around my purpose. One of them was when I saw big purposes, like the people we talked about before, I wanted to jump into purposes as big as that. You tell a story in the book that it was one of your bosses at the time who said that you're the most important person in the world. You were having a bit of decision about, should I continue on with work? Should I stay back and forwards as well? Tell me a little bit more about that and where that fits into kind of expanding on your purpose as well.
Oh, absolutely. And shout out to Tim Cleary, because I still remember it like it was yesterday. And many of us find these forks in the road where we're going to go down a path that society expects us to go down, or, we think we should go down because of an inspiring chiropractor we saw on stage at a Parker or similar. And then there's our inner voice. And our inner voice is, you are the most important person in the world. And then in my world, I was working in TV at the time, and I'd really joined Channel 9 to add TV to my CV. I'd been in radio for 4 or 5 years. I'd worked in local newspapers, but I wanted to go overseas, and I wanted to tick TV off the CV so I could, get more jobs overseas. But then I was working at the AFL footy show at the time, and it was a big show back in 2005. And
the biggest.
It was like the only live TV show on national television outside of the news. Everything else, even back then, was pre-recorded. So it was a great gig. And my mum thought, oh my gosh, my son's made it. And my dad was so proud. And everyone's like, oh, my son works at Channel 9. And anyone here that had a job that is socially admired, if you work in movies or you work in, there are certain jobs that just have this social prestige that may not be deserved, but people think it's great. But I knew in myself that in 5 or 10 years' time, I looked at where I could go on that ladder, and it wasn't who I wanted to be, but it was who society thought I could and should be, or maybe my parents did. But there was that fork in the road, and I looked down that one, and I didn't know how it ended. But I knew, I just had this nagging voice. It's like, I'll go from sports media to personal growth, health and wellness media. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but I've got this girlfriend and she's into chiropractic and she's into organic food, and I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking Red Bulls, Angus, and living it up. But
Yeah.
I've just got this urge of health and wellness and personal growth. And can I do media in that rather than strained hamstrings and torn ACLs and players having an affair on their wife and how that impacts the football club? And it wasn't how I wanted to live my professional life for the rest of my life. It was a good experience, but the whole chiropractic health and wellness personal growth felt like it had more meaning to me. Well, not to judge others, but to me, that felt like my calling. But and Tim was just very much, he was so supportive in, you are the most important person in your world. You must make a decision for you. And when you make the best decision for you, you positively impact society when you are the best version of yourself. It sounds so cliche, but the number one regret of humanity is, I wish I lived my life according to my own expectations instead of the expectations of everyone else.
Yeah.
And this is these quiet lives of desperation because we're people pleasers and we're pleasing everyone else except ourselves. And so that's really been a big fork in the road in my own decision-making over the years.
Yeah. Another thing which I want to share here, which was valuable to me, at times when I feel overwhelmed from a purpose point of view, is when it feels too big. When I say things like, I want to change the world, I want to change the chiropractic profession, I want to change natural health care, it seems almost insurmountable to me. And then when I bring it back to a person, all of a sudden it feels manageable. I feel excited about it. I've told the story beforehand and want to just quickly relay it again here of the guy on the beach throwing out the starfish. There's a starfish everywhere and he's throwing them back in as they get washed, and every one he throws out, there's another 10 that wash in, until finally someone says to him, what's the point? It's not going to make any difference. He says, well, I just made a difference to that starfish there. And that to me brings me great ease. I still stay inspired. It doesn't feel so all-consuming and overwhelming as well. And so when I was able to pair my purpose back, as opposed to being responsible for saving the world or our profession, the two, that seemed a lot more manageable as well. And then I think, because you touched on it before, it was, grace was the quote as well from, I'm trying to think of the woman who actually wrote the book in around the dying.
Bronnie Ware.
Yeah. And Bronnie was talking. Yeah. Yes. So she was talking to Grace, and that was her wish was, I wish I'd had the courage to live the life that was true to myself as well. So in there too, tell me a little bit as well, because I'm also fascinated about this 7-year cycle thing. You touched on that. But do you think also, my experience of this is that it's okay for a purpose to change, and that it is maybe...
God, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm in my third career. I spent 7 years in the media, traditional media. I then spent 7 years in chiropractic, managed a practice in Ireland and in South Gippsland, and then started this Exceptional Life Blueprint business in 2014. And we're in the year 2021. I don't need any reminders that changing careers, doing multiple 10,000 hours, however you like to term it. I think it's fabulous. And I often speak about this with chiropractors because I'm often fascinated why chiropractors end up having side businesses and other things. And I think it's because if you've got this entrepreneurial spirit or this creative spirit, and you couldn't think of anything worse than being in the same job for 40 years and that's not your style, like, you're allowed to be okay with that.
Yes.
Like, it's okay. And I think I know some wonderful, we've got mutual friends. So Wayne Todd, as a chiropractor in Sale, Wayne loves to get up every morning, or most mornings, and go to his practice in Sale. And they've got practices all over the country, but he just likes to go to Sale in a practice and help the starfish in Sale. And he's not worried about the starfish everywhere else because he just helps the starfish in Sale.
Yes.
And he's a pig in shit. He just loves it, right? But then you got his beautiful wife, Angela. She's doing so many other things. And she doesn't want to do the same thing all the time. And I think we've got to be okay with all of the different scratches in life that we might want to, or the itches we might want to scratch. And I feel like, I don't know if there's a transformation or if society's often been like this, Angus, but we've been indoctrinated to the 40-year working life or career. And I think if that's what you love, then go into it, all the way. But definitely don't be afraid to change career. I like to look at life 7 years in advance. I
Yes.
think that's a good commitment period. I'm not sure what you think about this as someone that's, you've done multiple things in your business life, but I just look at it and there is a magic around 7 years, an absolute magic around it.
It was a freedom for me to be reading this thing and then to look back over my life. What I struggled with. So even because I would go back just to double tap on Wayne, for instance, I would contend that Wayne, though, isn't the same chiropractor that he was 7 years ago. I mean, he's written a book, he's continued to develop.
Totally.
And so even I think the reason that he's so excited and so vibrant in chiropractic is whilst from the outside, him helping his patients in the practice in sale, there too, but he has evolved as a person. I had a great chiropractor on here, Miguel Cruz, recently, who's 40 plus years in practice. And man, Miguel's superpower is being totally cool with change. That's what it is. What will I do now? I'll have a go at this technique. And he just goes all in with it as well. The challenge for me came, what held me back was when you asked me who I was, I told you I was a chiropractor. And so because that's the identity that I said that I was, it was very hard for me to get out of that and doing what I am doing now. And it took me a long time to realize that, because every time I'd take a step out, I felt like I was cheating on chiropractic. Like, it was wild. I'm like, get over yourself, dude. You're not nearly that important.
Sarah didn't feel like we could sell our practice. She thought she was killing her patients, couldn't do it. It's an incredible thing that we stop ourselves from, isn't it?
Yes. And so that's why I like to encourage chiropractors to say, hey, listen, chiropractic is just one of the things that you do. And you can have it be one of the things you do, and you can freaking love it too. Like, it's okay. It's just one of the things. And then that opens up freedom for that 7-year reinvention for, you to evolve and change. And you might decide that not even going to be one of the things that you continue to do anymore. And that's okay as well. You talk about in there too, I'd like you just to touch on 5 steps to actually be living your life's work as well, to be putting it into play, so to speak. Can you touch on those for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and I'll probably get the book here because I'll muck up the order if I don't do it properly. I think the ones that, because there's ones that resonate with me. It's like anything in a book. There's some that really, really get you and some that don't. The ones that really get me are just never retire, because I feel like most people think that we should get to this point in our life where we actually don't have to be engaged in life anymore. And it freaks me out how much society has indoctrinated themselves in that. But I think the first thing is obviously just to identify the seeds. Like, look back on your life.
Yep.
And life is an art. I really think if we can see our life as a masterpiece, no matter how traumatic it's been, and no matter what's happened in your life, look at your life as a painting, and then combine the elements of your life that feel really powerful and poignant. So I know I had a magnificent obsession with sport growing up. I just could not stop it. Okay. And then when I combined that with media and studying journalism and all the rest of it, you can see how we can do this when we can combine these seeds, and then what will it look like? But then when we can identify the seeds and combine them, we can't expect, and this is what a lot of people feel like, they're going to do a course and then bang, they're going to be the best practitioner or the best whatever course they've studied. People feel like they're going to be great professionals straight away. And we've seen the struggles in this in chiropractic. You come out of university, you're so book smart, but you're not really street smart, and you've got to learn communication skills and difficult practice members, and how do I master the art of business and all of the rest of it. Like, that takes time. Those 7, particularly those first 2 years out of practice, but then almost like reset the button and give yourself 7 years in business to work out.
Yeah, I would agree.
You can actually navigate that game, because, it's like when we say there's very little nutrition training in medical degrees. Well, there's very little business training in chiropractic degrees in any health profession. Like, you can be great at your craft, but terrible in business. And we could probably wax lyrical off the air on all of the bad stories, that we know about that. So then I think, giving it time. And then step 4 is never retire. I think that's the one that really grabs me. And I do share some stories in there. Like, think of Nelson Mandela. I think of Charles Eugster, who was a retired dentist, and then his wife died and he thought he would die, but then he kept on living and he got to about 90, and then he started exercising again, and he became the fastest man over 95 because he just did not die, and then he died at 97 after he'd written a book called Age is Just a Number. So for all of us watching and listening, we have to recognize that longevity is on our side. Australia is the 4th longest living country on the planet.
Right.
We're number 4 in the world. And sadly, we dropped to number 15 for quality of life. So we have on average 72 great years and then 11 crappy years. Lots of medication, poor quality, like living in one room, 4 walls, sitting on a couch, watching TV and all of the rest of it. So we have to be really conscious of the fact that retiring is a massive factor in that poor quality of life. And then, as I've said, step 5, enjoy your work or start over. No one of the exceptionals does not love their life. And if they're 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, they're loving what they do. And if they're not, they find something new, which we've already brushed on. So they're the 5. I think it's really important that we honor each one of them. But no doubt, as I said to you, my favorite one is never retire. I never want to unengage from life. I can unengage from earning money if I really want to, but I don't want to unengage from life. And when a lot of people retire from their work, they also retire from their life.
I think, when I was reading through those, that there's a couple of things inside of there too, like live a life that's just so wonderful, or work a life that's just so wonderful that you don't want to retire. And that's my idea. And I think I was kind of introduced to this concept first by Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, where he was the one that said to me, look, people die when they retire. So design your life so it's so wonderful that you don't want to retire, or take mini retirements throughout your life. Do something, take time off. Do something, take time off. And I love that as an idea as well. I want to jump into the 8th ingredient in this exceptional life, which you call spirit. And the interesting thing that you talk about is that spirit is not a separate ingredient in itself, but it's one that needs to be kind of weaved into all of the other 7. Why is that? And then, well, perhaps before that, can you define what you mean by spirit, and why is it an essential ingredient of the previous 7?
Oh, great question. I'm loving this. So I used to call it spirit, soul, and faith because I wanted to please everyone. And it has multiple terms, and that's okay. So people can call it whatever they want. But what I felt is that we are in such a to-do list society. We're doing gratitude. We're doing meditation. We're doing CrossFit. We're doing Are You Okay Day. We're doing keto. We're doing random acts of kindness. And there seems to me to be a big lack of human being in our life. Like we almost have become so indoctrinated to, do the right thing that we've kind of lost our soul. We've lost our spirit. And when I think of, going for a run and feeling the tingles down the spine, if everyone's got a different kind of timer on this, but if you love to run, you kind of get to the 10K mark and you just feel at one with the world. It's a spiritual experience. Or you could feel that riding a bike or doing ballet. It doesn't matter. You can be sitting down with good friends, having a glass of wine, and you just have this moment where you just feel, like you just feel at peace with the world. Or you could cut open a mango and just have one of those random moments where you go, oh my gosh, how does Mother Nature create this? Or you could look into the eyes of your child or your spouse and just have another spiritual moment of like, holy moly, what matrix am I in? This is just a phenomenal thing. You could be reading a book, playing a piano, going, how does this sound come out of this instrument? Same thing with wealth and having an experience, and same thing with work. Your spirit is in every single element of your life. And if we attempt to deny that, then what ends up happening is we put it in the box of this 20-minute moment at 6 a.m. where we have to have this come to Jesus moment as we practice our TM. And if we don't, then we're bad at meditating and the rest of the day is not going to go our way because we sucked at it then, or the kids interrupted my time and how dare you, and we can't be spiritual for the rest of the day because it didn't work at the time that I scheduled it on my to-do list to do. So we've almost scheduled our spiritual life, but I don't have to tell you this, Angus. Our entire second, every minute, every hour of every day is a spiritual experience. And as much as that chapter was the hardest chapter of the book to write, I wanted to end the book on the reminder that you can't just make this game a mental to-do list. You have to inject your spirit, your enthusiasm, your inspiration into every area of life.
Yeah, I got it again. I want to really acknowledge and congratulate, because you've done some heavy lifting in this chapter as well. In particular, you talk about the 4 spiritual lessons in there, and you haven't, because there's a tendency sometimes in spirit just to go down, and you've done this in other parts of the book. Marty Seligman's Learned Optimism. Here's how to be happy all the time. Okay. And it's kind of, and it would be okay if you did that. But the 4 spiritual lessons you talk about, there's 2 in particular I want to talk about in here where you really acknowledge. The first one I want to talk about is pain is inevitable. So it's not hiding from, it's not pain, there's a silver lining in around it. You go, no, pain is inevitable as well. Tell me about that, and then share with the listeners the concept of creating your own challenges and why that might be more important nowadays than ever beforehand.
Well, I gather Lauren experienced some pain in the birth of Sonny 2.5 weeks ago. And you look what comes on the other side of pain and you think, holy moly. I think every chiropractor, chiropractic assistant, chiropractic practice member, anyone involved in that profession listening to this or watching this will recognize that the large majority, even though you promote checking the car, getting the car serviced when it's going well and not always, repairing a broken car, you'll acknowledge that most people, the human condition is hardwired to really come in when pain is there. So do you want to stop that? Do you really want to stop that? When you consider all of the most powerful, valuable experiences of your life, I think each one is preceded by some pain. Whether you're married to your sweetheart, I reckon that first fight was probably a painful experience to go through. I think going through stressful experiences together, whether it's starting a business, building a home, raising children, anything that is worthwhile in life has pain associated to it. I go down some pretty dark rabbit holes, from Holocaust survivors and war heroes and, Malala Yousafzai, who had a bullet through her brain and went through major pain to become a major leader in society. But I really can't find anyone that is at the top of their game that has not experienced some pain. So the message is that if you are trying to avoid pain at all costs, then perhaps maybe consciously create some painful experiences to develop your spiritual muscle so that you have more ownership of your exceptional life, rather than kind of ducking and weaving from one comfort to the next, whether it's Netflix to chocolate cake to bourbon to whatever that comfort of choice is. We need to go and actively choose our challenges.
I think for no other reason is that the idea of letting people know that pain is inevitable is because that's what life is. And I've had some great realizations recently. I have developed a skill over life of reframing things to the extent where sometimes I didn't experience the pain, and I realized it wasn't actually good for me. This last 2 years has been me wanting to actually experience the pain a little more. We had a good friend of ours have a loss recently, and I wanted to feel very, very sad about that. And the reason I wanted to feel very sad about that is because, I think life is valuable. And so in order for me to want to feel, because there is this background story that's going on with the advertisers, from selling us the cars to the watches to the computers to the clothes, is that here's how you be happy all of the time. And I'm going to contend you don't want to be happy all of the time, because if you have to be happy all the time, you have to be happy about all the death and the pain and the rape and the sadness and all those kind of things there too. It's that richness there where we can be in control of our sadness, to bask in it, to feel it more. Like I'm at the moment, and maybe in 12 months' time I'll report back, but at the moment I'm wanting to sit in some of the pain, because it also makes those mangoes more beautiful. It makes the sunsets more beautiful as well. If I can open up my range more inside of that, I get both sides from there as well. And that brings me into the the second point, which I want you to, we've touched on this throughout this, is that we live in conflict of opposites as well. What does that mean? And where does that fit into this concept of the spiritual lessons?
Well, there's a few beautiful open loops that I can feel as this draws to a close. We're beginning to close, which is fabulous. You're a masterful interviewer. We spoke about, you just mentioned happiness, and on the other side of the coin is sadness. We spoke at the very beginning about wrongdoing and right doing, and in between those opposites, as Jim Rohn says, who I quote directly from in the book, is we are stuck in the middle. And the middle is hard. The middle is messy. The middle is sitting there and feeling it, and at the same time seeing the mango, seeing Sonny's beautiful eyes, and seeing that just beautiful thing that is a mother of a newborn child, and feeling all of that, feeling the lack of sleep, and feeling the wonder that you can experience at 2 a.m, but also feeling that does time even exist anymore? And feeling, again, for me, the conflict of opposites is we get so caught up on being happy all the time or just being a Debbie Downer all the time. And we probably know both of them. I was very much more like, Marcus is always happy. There's got to be something up. And I was pretending. I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought I had to be happy all the time. Everything had to have a positive spin all the time. But I think we must, to fully embrace life, as you're saying right now, and I love how open and honest you are about this, sometimes we have to acknowledge, I just want to sit in this and experience more than just two polarizing experiences of life. I actually want the messy middle. And sadly or not, a lot of people won't want you to experience that, because then they'll almost call you a fence sitter, that you actually, no, you've got to make a decision, Angus. Like, is this good or bad? Is this right or wrong? It's like, well, just let me sit with it. Like, I just want to sit in this. And I talk about love and hate as these conflict of opposites, right and wrong, health and sickness, wealth and poverty. There are so many. And we do get, like you said, indoctrinated to think that having the car is good and having the car is happiness. And even debt, a lot of people think being in debt is bad. But then there's a great line from, I think it's DeMartini. He's like, your debt is all of the trust that people before you had in you to do something in your life, particularly if you took out a business loan, or even if it was a credit card loan or whatever it was. We get so built into right, wrong, good, bad, but anything great has far more wisdom in the middle rather than the beginning or the end or the high or the low.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, it's such a beautiful piece of work that you've put together here. I can only imagine the hours that have gone into it. And I want to thank you for that, and acknowledge you for that as well. Where do peeps find the book? What's the best way for them to engage with it and to engage with you going forwards?
Oh, thanks, Angus. I appreciate those beautiful compliments. The book is available everywhere, as most books are these days. So the audio book is read by me, and however you like to consume audiobooks. If you're international, you're probably better off buying it at Amazon or one of the big international online retailers. If people want a signed copy, the thing with books these days, I can control the quality of the paper and the front cover, and I can sign the book for people in Australia that want a more personalized. I can put a bookmark in there. That they support me more if they want to buy it direct at marcuspierce.com.au.
Great.
But I don't expect everyone to do that. They can go to Amazon or they can listen to the audiobook or get the ebook for like $10 off any of those places. But if they want a signed copy with a bookmark, then marcuspierce.com.au and they'll see it there. And then the socials are just at Marcus D. Pearce, D for David, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the like.
Beautiful. I'll make sure we have all of those linked up again. And then I'm going to promise it won't be as long between episode 3 as it has been between 1 and 2. So, mate, thank you for everything. I look forward to chatting with you real soon. Give my love to your beautiful bride and the kids.
I will. And Angus, as I said at the beginning, you have blazed a trail in your profession. And I didn't tell you this earlier, but if we had available to us what you are making available to the profession now, I feel like particularly our first 3 to 4 years in practice, we would have learned a whole lot quicker with what you're putting out there in the world. So thank you for your contribution to the profession and to society. And thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure, mate. See you soon. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.